Okay, so before I talk about this video, let me start by saying two things. One, I am not the biggest fan of the Injustice universe, both games and comics, and I'll give my thoughts as to how and why I feel about them later in this video. And two, I'm personally fine with NetherRealms moving on to newer projects outside of the Injustice world, basically choosing to start new things outside of the Injustice timeline. But I still choose to make this video because I wanted to voice out my thoughts on the overall games that NetherRealms has created. So I was recently talking to a really close friend of mine about DC fighting games and NetherRealm Studios' influence on all the progress that DC and Warner Bros. Games have made so far. And we talked about the pros and the cons of the Injustice games, how they had really good gameplay but they were lacking in story mode. But in the end, we both came to a conclusion that if the games are actually over with Injustice 2 as the last entry, we wouldn't be upset about it. Because since it's taking them such a long time to announce Injustice 3, it sort of looks like they might not have any future plans for the universe, especially in the gaming department, and might just choose to end with Injustice 2 and start all over again with DC, which in my personal opinion, I'm actually okay with. However, I started thinking about it a little bit more than I should, and I thought to myself, how about one more game to fully conclude not just the Injustice universe, but the new Mortal Kombat universe as well. And the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I started liking my ideas. So I figured why not make a video about it where I give my little ideas on how they can conclude their storylines and ask you guys how you feel about them. But before any of that, before I give any of my ideas and concepts on Injustice 3, I want to first of all give my brief thoughts on how I feel about both the Injustice and new Mortal Kombat games. So let's start with the Mortal Kombat games because this is the one that I actually like a little bit more. I am a huge fan of the Mortal Kombat franchise. I love most of the characters, the lore and the stories that they made for themselves. However, not all the games are solid, and the adaptations are way worse. This is especially the case for the new MK timeline, the one that have 3 games in their new universe. The games that were made by NetherRealms are intriguing to say the least.
Intriguing.
However, for me personally, I still really like the new games. Now, don't get me wrong, the old ones done by Midway are 10 times better for me because they had a much better and interesting story to them. Shao Kahn was a great villain, Raiden was treated with respect, Unaga was next level, the MK universe had substance with a level of intensity to them, and above all, Liu Kang was the main hero and face of the universe. Remember when that was cool? When Liu Kang was the good, compelling hero of the MK universe? Good times. But despite all this, I still really like the new MK games. Again, trust me, I'm fully aware of the flaws. Despite the cool visuals and sweet gameplay, the newer games have some really annoying flaws when it comes to the portrayal of the characters. The biggest flaw with them, in my opinion, is with their story mode. To put it simply, it's just lacking. It doesn't have the substance of what made the older games stand out. Basically, the newer games are just doing cool stuff for the sake of being cool. They are solely depending on the violent nature of the game rather than the story. Because of this, they ended up ruining some characters, stupidly overpowering others, replacing main characters, and making terrible villains.
It is a mistake challenging a Titan. Now I end your existence.
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No.
But still, these games are really fun. Even the worst one for me being MK10 is still so much fun to play. And I appreciate their effort of trying to do something new, even if the new things that they were trying to do was so little. And in the end, they realized that the characters that they were trying to ignore and leave behind were the most important characters of their universe. Which explains why in MK11, they tried to give all 3 of them some pretty cool moments. To me, the newer games of the MK timeline remind me a lot of the new 52 of the DC universe, that rebooted their timelines and tried to do something new by making all their characters younger, cooler and edgier. But then they still ended up back to their roots because fans weren't happy with the stories that they were trying to tell. That's pretty much the summary of the MK universe in a nutshell. The new trilogy to me were a lot like Justice League Darkseid War and Scott Snyder's DC's Metal event, where everything is just so hyper and cool, nothing makes sense, characters are ridiculously OP, but in the end, it's still a lot of fun to read, because even though there is no substance and nothing ends up changing in the long run, the epic moments in the story still end up being a standout, and you end up appreciating some of their efforts in the end. Like, I know I'm in the minority when I say this, but MK11 and Death Metal are my favorites because despite the cool visuals, memorable moments, and engaging gameplay, they are still a little bit cool to me because I understood the story they were trying to tell. Despite how awful and nonsensical the villains were, the strongest and biggest part to me of these stories were the heroes. They made the main three characters really important and have some of the best moments in the entire story. But yes, the villains do really suck. Like Kronika and Perpetua are just literally the same character. Just bland characters that were way too hyped for the stories that they were in. But again, overall, despite how lazy they are and despite how flawed the games are, they are still so much fun to play for me. They are not too annoying like the next timeline that I'm about to talk about. So this now brings me to the Injustice timeline, and while I'm going to try to give my brief thoughts on this universe, both the games and the comics, I will spend a bit more time breaking my thoughts on them than I did with Mortal Kombat universe because I want to make sure that my view on them are very clear. So like I said earlier in the beginning, I'm not the biggest fan of this universe. I know a lot of people like them, I know a lot of people speak very highly of them, but for me, when talking about the games, aside from the cool gameplay and art of the comic, the story and ways of portrayal of some of my favorite characters really annoy me. And the comics makes things way worse. The only stories that I can fully say I liked personally was Injustice 1, and that was mainly the game, not the comic. So what I'm gonna do first is explain why the first Injustice game works for me, and then as I'm going on, I'll then dive into the comic and the sequels. So please, I want you all to know, while most of the things I say here is my opinion, and I think that my opinions are solid, I want you guys to see it as a subjective take and not an objective one. I'll get a little biased in the video because of my love for two particular characters, so I'm saying it right now. And any of you guys who listen to my opinions and disagree with me, I'm very open to discussions down in the comments. With this out of the way, let me jump into the Injustice universe. I think the best way for me to explain why I personally like the Injustice games more than the comics and to show the difference is to overall point out the main goal between both of them. The goal of the first Injustice game is to show us the difference between our classic heroes and the alternate versions. Basically to make us love our main heroes more, to make us understand the positive impact that these classic heroes have on us. And I think I speak for most people who've played the game, but they executed this goal really well. The goal of the Injustice comic, however, is simply to make Batman cooler than he already is. And they chose to do this by simply making Superman and Wonder Woman evil. Compared to the games, the point of the comic wasn't to make us appreciate our heroes, but to see how evil they can get and how awesome it would be for Batman to take them down. Now trust me, I like Batman. I think he's one of the coolest and compelling heroes in DC, but choosing to make him cooler or more awesome in sacrifice of other great characters is just not acceptable for me. The biggest character to suffer from this is Wonder Woman, because compared to Superman, at least he had a little bit of reason for what he was doing and why he was doing it. And this gave him a little bit of edge and added more layers to this version of Superman. The keyword here being a little, because I still don't like this Superman. But with Wonder Woman, she has no reason whatsoever to act the way she does. Wonder Woman in this game and in the entire Injustice universe is purely evil because she wants a taste of how Superman's dead leg would feel inside of her. She is purely evil in this game because she wants to please Superman, and she gets way worse in the sequels of this universe. And as a huge fan of her character and what she stands for, it annoys me to see her in this form of portrayal. Even other characters call her out on her nonsense.
After Metropolis, Superman showed me the truth. Man's aggression cannot be tempered, only quelled. Slaughter the innocent? As Zeus fooled Hippolyta, Superman beguiles you. You lecture me. How much blood is on your ledger, Quinn?
Oh, bucket's full, honey. I was trying too hard to impress the wrong guy. Kinda like you with Superman.
Got him!
Got him!
And I know some of you guys are ready to tell me to relax because it's an alternate universe, so the characters are supposed to be different. But if that's the case, then why is Batman in this universe so normal? Why is he the only guy who acts like the classic hero from the normal timeline? Give some credit to JLU because when they tried this similar concept, every character including Batman was evil, until he met his classic counterpart and then remembered why exactly he was fighting the good fight. And this was also what the first Injustice game did, making classic Batman beat some sense into Injustice Batman and making him understand that they both need Superman. And this brings me to the biggest reason as to why I love the first Injustice game. It treats classic Superman with so much weight and respect. The build-up, discussion and reveal of his character is just so good. And once he shows up, he instantly bodies every villain. And that's not even all that he does. You can see him still trying to prevent casualties and giving great advice to characters of the Injustice universe. The same goes for Wonder Woman as well. The classic version just shows up and completely destroys the Injustice version.
My obligations don't end at the borders of my dimension. I am this world's savior. I protect it. That's what's happening out there? Protection? Disobedient children will be punished. Children? We're not gods. We don't decide who lives and who dies.
The decision is mine. It became mine when Joker turned me into a weapon of mass destruction.
Lois's death doesn't
He
just...
stole her from me.
You stole this planet's freedom. It's time to give it back.
She has enabled one man to inflict his rage on an entire planet. Let him be consumed by his darkest passions, rather than extricate him from despair. Sisters, let us return to the right side of history. Let us enter battle, but as humankind's protector, not its destroyer. We are Amazons. We are here to save mankind.
I hate the fact that most people only remember this game because they showed us the evil versions of Superman and Wonder Woman, when it also gave us peak forms of the classic characters and shows us without shame why we love them so much. I love the first Injustice game, and yes, I know the visuals and the graphics are a bit outdated and the gameplay is a bit too stiff, but to me the story is what holds this game so high. Same cannot be said for the comics and sequels that came after it. I'll just keep this quick. What the comics did was to take some of the aspects of the story of the game and twist it. They took out some parts and the parts they chose to leave just felt empty. The biggest offender for this is how they chose to handle classic Superman in the comics. Like I said, the Superman we got was peak Superman. Once he shows up, he makes everything look so easy, he saves people, he gives sound advice, he beats up most of the bad guys, and the best part, he single-handedly beats up evil Superman and gives him the last punch. The comics on the other hand just ruined the whole thing. The two worst parts for me from the comics was when they made Harley Quinn help him out with beating up Doomsday and then making Batman have the last punch. Because, you know, it's priority to make Batman cooler than he already is. And yes, it might look like I'm nitpicking because I'm more of a Superman fanboy than Batman, but the people who chose to adapt the story into the comic clearly had no respect for the original story, and they clearly had no respect for the character of Superman. Since they like Batman more, they chose to strip away most of the point of the story of the game to satisfy their Batman fantasy. The game came out before the comic, and they still chose to do the service to the story. It's not enough that Superman was already evil in this universe, but when classic Superman finally showed up, they chose to cut away most of his moments. Even the little details of what makes me appreciate the first game so much was stripped away from the comic book.
We need to get started. Innocent people are dying.
We'll take the others, so you can focus on their Superman.
We'll do it together. It'll prevent more casualties. Then Superman. Doomsday's gonna be tricky.
Collateral damage.
I'll have to force that fight elsewhere. Anything else?
I realize this isn't entirely accurate, but it's good to have you back.
I think I've said and showed enough differences between the game and the comic. If it doesn't make you understand how biased the writers were in the comic to a story that came first in a game and was executed perfectly, then I don't know what will. The writer is currently doing the exact same thing with another story that people are speaking so highly of, and I eventually intend to get to that one when it's finally done. Now, despite all the stuff that I've said here, despite not fully liking the comics because of the writer's biases to a certain character, not everything about the Injustice comics and universe was a complete red flag for me. While I didn't like the main 3 characters of the story, I ended up loving some of the side characters instead. Green Arrow, Black Canary, Harley Quinn and John Constantine ended up being my favorite characters of the entire story. While I personally think Injustice 2 video game sucked, not just the story but the title as well, I appreciate the little bit of effort they tried to do with some new characters. Supergirl, her backstory and her journey to being a hero was decent to watch, and the game also gave better visuals and more flexible gameplay. And for all the crap that I've said about the Injustice comics, the final panels of the annual issues of both stories were great and beautiful to read. They made me understand what I think was supposed to be the point of the Injustice story, even if it wasn't told really well. Basically, what I ended up understanding from some of the panels of the story is that you should always be there for your friend and close ones when they are emotionally or mentally broken, even if you guys' point of view might be a little bit different. Never let an issue that could easily go away through healing and affinity escalate itself into something a bit more terrifying. Never let small problems become big problems. Always be there for your friend no matter what. I just wish the universe was consistent with the story, rather than choosing to be biased to a character. So while I'm not the biggest fan, I do see the effort and appreciate the little things it did well. And while I'm completely fine with an announcement of no more Injustice fighting games, I thought it might be a good idea to come up with a little rough draft as to how I want the final game in the Injustice universe to go, and complete its fighting game trilogy. One that culminates not just the Injustice universe, but the new MK alternate universe as well. And yes, it's another attempt at an MK vs DC universe fighting game. And yes, I know the last attempt at this was terrible. Even though the Superman was peak in that game.
Bruce, I hear you. You're right. It was my mistake that created that thing. I have to stop it.
Not alone. Darkseid himself nearly killed you. This Khan creature is much more powerful.
Thank you, Bruce.
Damn impulsive. Good luck.
I agree that the game overall was bad. But just because it was a failed attempt before, doesn't mean it can't work now. I mean, MK characters have been teasing themselves since the first Injustice game. So why not give it a try? The new MK universe just recently finished their trilogy on a high note and had a good setup for their new timeline, with Liu Kang as the new fire god. But what they also unintentionally did was create a setup that could be tapped for Injustice 3. And this was done in the ending of MK Aftermath with Shang Tsung alternate victory. Similar to how Batman's victory in Injustice 2 is the real victory for the Injustice timeline, and the Superman victory was an alternate victory for Injustice vs Masters of the Universe tie-in, then same can be said about the Shang Tsung victory from Mortal Kombat Aftermath, which I want to use as the setup for Injustice 3 to conclude its own trilogy. The dialogues given by Shang Tsung, Raiden and Fujin are great proof of this setup.
Though my new power lets me roam infinite timelines and feast upon the souls of billions, I am vulnerable. To survive, I must return to the shadows, avoid confrontation, and work my will through the hands of others.
Outworld, Earthrealm, the Netherrealm, all are conquered.
Per your command, Chaos Realm and Order Realm are next. All realms will soon yield to your influence.
It has begun.
Shang Tsung now has the ability to travel through multiple timelines, and he has pretty much conquered all the realms in the MK universe. So what if he chooses to come to the Injustice timeline and with the help of his new powerhouse army chooses to invade and conquer it as well? The powerhouse army includes of Sindel, Shao Kahn, Kung Lao, Raiden and Fujin. And for some of you guys asking what about Liu Kang, well, Shang Tsung reverted him back to his zombie form, so he will be his lapdog. I mean, come on, we can all see Shang Tsung doing this. Plus it gives an opportunity to bring back zombie Liu Kang. So Shang Tsung basically shows up with his army in the Injustice universe, kills most of the Justice League, and then chooses to merge the little of MK world with the Injustice world together. And now it's up to Superman and Batman and the remaining characters of both worlds to stop him and set things back to normal. This is my setup, and yes, I know it's a bit metaphysical and strange and it might not work if it's not executed properly, but for me it would be pretty cool to see if done well. And this is just the plot and concept. What about the characters and story? Well, since this is the Injustice timeline, Superman and Batman will be the main characters. As for Wonder Woman, she died during the invasion. She tried to single-handedly take on Shang Tsung Powerhouse and they killed her. We can say that before she died, she first of all killed one of them, which is Fujin. I know this might sound cool and make Wonder Woman look like a badass, but honestly, it's just my personal reason for killing off her character right off the gate, because as a fan of Wonder Woman from the comics, this is one of the worst portrayal I've seen of her character, and I just want her gone immediately. I will say that her fight with the Powerhouse will be done visually and in a cinematic way so that she can at least look cool while doing it. And also, Wonder Woman is the reason why Superman and Batman survived the invasion. Speaking of Superman and Batman, the main story will start with them. It's gonna be with Batman visiting Superman in prison, very similar to the comics, but the emotions are different. Basically, Superman regrets the actions that he has done and he knows it's too late to ask for forgiveness. So he's kind of accepted his state as a prisoner now. We can just say the time in the Phantom Zone made him think and reevaluate things. So when next he talks with Batman, he's not throwing a tantrum and acting like he's right, but instead he talks to Batman like his friend, knowing fully well that it's already too late for him. But it's not just Superman. I want Batman as well to miss talking to his best friend. He won't show it, but his mannerism and body language will make us understand how Batman feels. So before the invasion, when they have their conversations from the Kryptonite prison, I want us to see these feelings between them. Then after Shang Tsung invasion, and Superman is free from his prison because they are both somewhat in the MK universe, then they both take on the next step. So basically, Batman would not trust Superman at first, but Superman, being a little bit of a changed person now, will tell Batman that after they figure out what's going on and they stop it, then he will go back to his cell. Basically, he won't fight Batman once they handle the situation at hand. And I know it sounds a little similar to Injustice 2, but the main difference here is that Superman knows he's wrong. He's fully willing to help in this game without any hidden agendas. And as we keep playing the story mode, we are going to be seeing it. Batman as well will see it and appreciate that he's seeing a little bit of his friend back. So how would they stop Shang Tsung, being that he's so OP right now? Well, this is my solution. The battlefield where Shang Tsung, Liu Kang and Kronika fought still has a lot of energy in it. Someone needs to gather all the energy from the battlefield and overload Shang Tsung with it. Because Shang Tsung himself said that Kronika's power almost overwhelmed him, which means he can't take too much of it because he isn't a Titan. So how does Superman and Batman know of this? Well, they'll have to meet a character from Mortal Kombat who know all about Shang Tsung and how he has such powers. So who's this character? My pick would be Milena. And I know she's dead right now in the new MK timeline, but I don't care. And I have a reason for bringing her. My reason for this is because apart from being created by Shang Tsung, I also want to give her a character arc as well. We can say Shang Tsung killed off Kitana and brought her back instead, because this will give me an opportunity to see through her character. Basically, I want us to understand the emotional and internal conflict that is going on with her and see that she's not just a Kitana clone villain. I want her and Injustice Superman to have a moment with each other where they both talk about all the terrible things that they've done and how they regret it. This also gives us an opportunity to see like a weird DC MK trilogy with Batman, Superman and Milena as they go through all the realms together. Milena can guide both of them as they keep jumping through realms after realms until they get to Kronika's keep. This gives us an opportunity to see DC character in all the Mortal Kombat realms. And then of course we'll need one more character to gather all the energy from the atmosphere. We'll need a character that is an expert in magic, and this is where either Zatanna or John Constantine comes in place. To me personally, I want it to be Constantine because I want him to be an actual character in the story. So now we have the main 4 characters for the main story, and as all this is happening, we can cut back and forth to the secondary plot of the story, which focuses on the other survivors of Shang Tsung invasion, and it consists of the remaining characters from both DC and Mortal Kombat universes. with Supergirl, Cassie Cage and Jackie Briggs as the lead. This also gives us an opportunity to bring back all the young characters of the MK world, cause Shang Tsung killed the older ones. As for DC, some of the survivors will include Hal Jordan, Atrocitus and Carol Ferris, with 3 of them being the only survivors of their Lantern Corps. And then in the end, when the final battle happens, this is how I want the climax to go. Basically, someone has to get close enough to Shang Tsung to overload him, but this person might not end up making it out alive. So in a nutshell, someone has to sacrifice himself to take out Shang Tsung, and I want this person to be Superman. But before he sacrifices himself, I want him to have a great final scene with both Batman and Supergirl. I want Superman to look at Batman and apologize for all the things that he has done. And he also looks at Supergirl and tells her that he's proud of her. He then smiles at both of them and chooses to sacrifice himself and take out Shang Tsung. So before I give away my overall point for the reason of this video and my concept, I want to first of all mention some of the personal extra things that I would like to see in the game. Basically, the new characters, DLC characters, returning characters from both universes, skins or costumes, and dream battles that I would love to see. It is still a fighting game after all. Let's start with the skins. Now, there are many that I would like to see, but the top ones would be all Ben Affleck and Pattinson's Batman costume, some Joker costume, particularly the Nightmare costume, some Harley Quinn costumes, particularly the costume she wore in the Suicide Squad. Was it really a costume? And then Henry and Tyler's Superman costumes, particularly the black costume that Henry Cavill wore in Zack Snyder's Justice League. As for new characters in the game, these are the ones that I want, with John Constantine, voiced by Matt Ryan, Huntress and Will Freddy's Batman Beyond being at the top of the list. And then returning characters from both the MK and DC world. These are the ones that I will choose from DC, with Hawkgirl, Lobo and Black Manta being at the top of the list. And as for Mortal Kombat, these are the ones that I want back, with Unaga, Emak and Shujinko being at the top of the list. Plus the main trilogy of the Lin Kuei clan. I want my robots of the Lin Kuei to be playable again. Now, as for DLC characters, there is a lot that I want to see, to the point that I'm actually thinking of making a separate video for it entirely. But these are the main characters that I would love to see, with John Wick voiced by Keanu Reeves, Punchline, Necron, Jon Snow voiced by Kit Harington, He-Man as just a way to pay homage to the Injustice vs Masters of the Universe comic, even though it's not that good, and The Witcher, which personally I would love if it was voiced by Henry Cavill. Now, I know that most of these DLC and returning characters look like a lot because, well, yeah, they actually are. But if I were NetherRealm Studios and I was making a third and final game to complete the trilogy, I would go all out with all the characters that I want to bring and would make sure that I end on a high note. If a game like this ends up happening and NetherRealm Studios gives us most of these characters, we can see and have some really cool dream matches like Supergirl vs Cassie, Wonder Woman vs Kitana, Harley Quinn vs Punchline, Atrocitus vs Necron, Black Canary vs Huntress, and the most exciting one for me, Geralt vs Jon Snow. I don't know, but to me, with great gameplay and cool character designs, I think most of these things that I just mentioned would be really cool to see. So, what's the point of this video? Why give my thoughts on the NetherRealm games, most especially the Injustice universe? Why make a pitch for the third game even when I already said that I'm not the biggest fan of the universe? Well, aside from attempting to make a better MK vs DC fighting game, and aside from all the dream battles, cool skins, DLC characters, new characters and cool team-ups, the answer is pretty simple. I just want a good representation of Superman in the Injustice universe. I want to prove that despite everything the Injustice Superman has done, that there is still hope for him. That we can still see him go on a journey where he tries to redeem himself. I want this Superman to have somewhat of a compelling story and have more layers to his character, rather than just being evil. I want us to see the glimpse of the Superman he once was before Lois died. I want us to care and root for him despite all the things that he has done. And I want us to root for him when he chooses to sacrifice himself to defeat Shang Tsung. That's what I want the goal and the point for the third Injustice game to be. Even if it ends up being a different story entirely, all I'm just hoping for is that their number one goal is to bring Superman back to form. And what better way of doing it than to use the Superman that started it all. The Superman that started the trend of evil Superman on screen. The new DC and MK games, in my opinion, made a mistake by choosing to drift away from the main characters of their universe and drive their attention to other characters simply because they were the most popular. Thankfully, the MK games eventually went back to Liu Kang and made him their focus. So here I am hoping that the next Injustice or DC game does it with Superman. But these are all my thoughts, my opinions and my ideas on the NetherRealm video games. I know I got a little bit nitpicky, I know I went on a little bit of a rant here and there, and I know that I was a little bit all over the place in this video, but I felt it was important to lay my thoughts on the NetherRealm games and what I think they should do in the future. But I would also like to know what you guys think of this. Are you a fan of the new Mortal Kombat games? And if Injustice 3 was to be announced today, how would you feel about it? What DLC or returning characters would you like to see? Do you also have your own ideas as to how you want the games to go? I'm very open to hearing all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. The entire DC Metal storyline is still way better than the Injustice universe. And honestly, I'll much rather see a really cool fighting game of that universe than Injustice 3.